Lashana Tova, Boker Tov, good morning. It's Yom Kippur, and in a moment we shall put on the Tallit. And if you've joined with us in services before, you've seen me hold the tzitzio, the special strings tied in a certain way, just before I put the talis over my head. And you're invited to do so as well. And I hope you have a Tallit with you. And it's our practice that males and females over the age of bar or bat mitzvah would be wearing a Tallit if they have one in their possession. And as I look at the strings, I might see the coils, and you might see them as well. And there are 4 little sections. And Ashkenazic coils are done in one way, and Sephardic coils are done in a slightly different way. But separating out slight differences that have crept into our tradition over many centuries, I'm not worried about the fact that there are slight differences in numbers of counting. And if you look at an Ashkenazi talis, you look at the first, second, and third sections, you have a total of number 26. 26 corresponds to the spelling out of the name Adonai. And then the last is 13 coils, which corresponds to the word Echad. So on every Ashkenazic tzitz, every single individual one, we have the phrase Adonai Echad, God is one. It's almost like an abbreviation of the Shema itself. So when we put a talis on, and we're wearing it upon our shoulders, and we are enfolded in the Tallit, we're also enfolded, symbolically you might say, in the Shema itself. We're wearing the Shema upon our shoulders. And you're invited to join me now. It's Lehit Teif B'tzitzit. Baruch Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu litatef b'tzitzit. We turn now to page number 37 in the Machzor, and if you're in a position where you can rise, traditionally one rises for the early morning blessings, the Birchot Shachar, beginning aloud on page number 37. Baruch Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher notan l'sechel v'vino l'avchin ben yom u'ben laila. Baruch Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam sha'asani b'tzalmo. Amen. Baruch Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam sha'asani Yisrael. Amen. Baruch Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam sha'asani ben chorin. Amen. Baruch Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam pokeach ivrim. Baruch Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam malbish arumim. Baruch Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam matir asurim. Baruch Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam zokef kifufim. Baruch Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam rokah haaretz al hamayim. Baruch Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam sha'asa li kol tzarki. Baruch Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hamechim mitzadei gaver. Baruch Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam ozer Yisrael bigvura. Baruch Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam oter Yisrael b'tifara. Baruch Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hanoten la'ev koach. Blessed are you, God, who bestows loving kindness upon the people Israel. And you're invited to have a seat. And if you have the Machzor, you're requested to turn now to page 43, the Psalm for Yom Kippur itself on page 43. Have mercy upon me, O God, as befits your faithfulness. In keeping with your abundant compassion, blot out my transgression. Wash me thoroughly of my iniquity and purify me of my sin, for I recognize my transgressions, and I am ever conscious of my sin. Against you alone have I sinned and done what is evil in your sight. So you are just in your sentence and right in your judgment. Indeed, I was born with iniquity, with sin my mother conceived me. And here I'm going to stop for a moment. And I want to put forth an understanding of Psalms. Psalms are from the Tanakh, from the Hebrew Bible. They begin under the hand, the authorship of David. And David is writing Psalms from his own experience, both for himself and also for the nation of Israel. He begins in his earlier life and then continues writing as he becomes king, the anointed. And his Psalms run the gamut of expression. And at a certain point in time, when we begin to develop what you and I call the prayer tradition, we take hold of Psalms and we incorporate them into our ceremonies and our rituals and our what we now call prayer services. But back in the days of David, there was no spoken prayer. There was just occasional gathering of some type, usually with sacrifices or offerings or incense. But I've stopped here for a moment because this sentence, frankly, could be a challenge for some people Jewishly, because you and I as Jews theologically disagree with this sentence. I was born with iniquity. We don't believe that we're born in sin. In fact, that's a dividing line between Judaism and a tradition that emerges much later. It's called Christianity. We do not believe in being born in sin. We believe that each one of us, every single day, makes 1,000 choices. And every one of us is responsible for her or his own behavior independently of anyone else. And frankly, that's why much later in our tradition we developed the idea of a bar mitzvah or a bat mitzvah, to underscore that as a child grows into maturity, he or she is now spiritually responsible for herself or himself. So theologically, this sentence really has no place. And therefore, you should ask me the question, why is the sentence here in the psalm? And now I'm going to tell you. Because the gist of this psalm is poetry. And poetry takes hold of the writer even as he or she is writing for himself and for others. And also perhaps because David at this point in his life perhaps saw himself in that manner. And also Jewish theology had not yet really developed to the extent that we have it now. So now we'll skip to the lower stanza. Fashion a pure heart for me, O God. Create in me a steadfast spirit. And that is something that you and I can take hold of without any type of reservation. Fashion a pure heart for me, O God. Create in me a steadfast spirit. And now our service continues on the bottom of page 44, the last 2 lines, in essence abbreviating the psalm for this special season of the year. Place your hope in Adonai, be strong, take courage. Place your hope in Adonai. Sometimes it requires courage of a different type to seek and obtain hope from some other source than ourselves. Baruch Shemamar, found on page 47, Baruch Shemamar, and it begins the service known as Psukei Zimra, verses of singing or song. And Baruch Shemamar alludes to the creation described in the book of Genesis, when God spoke and the world came into being. Baruch Shemamar, blessed is one who spoke, and the world came into being. But I'm looking at the 4th line down, Baruch Gozer Makayim. In royal translation, we would say, blessed is the one who makes a decree and perpetuates that decree. But in a more modernized Hebrew, we would say, blessed is the one who makes a promise and keeps the promise. I'm not capable of speaking, let there be light, let the heavens come forth, let the earth be filled with vegetation, and the world happens. I can't make a world out of speech. But I am capable of keeping my promises. When we say Baruch Gozer Makayim today, as we're beginning this brand new year, 5781, we can be a little bit like God, not creating light with words, but fulfilling our words and keeping our promises. And in that way, we're a little bit like God. Page 47. Baruch Shemamar v'Olam, Baruch Hu, Baruch Hoseh Bereshit, Baruch Omer v'Oseh, Baruch Gozer Makayim, Baruch Merachem al Haaretz, Baruch Merachem al Habriyot, Baruch Meshalem Sachar Tov L'Reov, Baruch Chayil Advakem L'Netzach, Baruch Bodeh Matzil, Baruch Shemo. Baruch Atah Adonai, our God, ruler of time and space, compassionate creator, extolled by your people, glorified by your faithful servants. We laud you with the psalms of your servant David. We extol you in song. We celebrate your fame in melody. We proclaim you sovereign, singular, eternal God. Baruch Atah Adonai, sovereign, extolled with songs of praise. Yochid Chei Olamim, Melech Mishpach Favar, Deat Shemo Gadol, Baruch Atah Adonai, Melech Moed Yishpachot. On page 56, this psalm, entitled Hallel Hagadol, has a chorus, and the chorus is Ki Le'olam Chasdo, and it holds a special place in my mind because the word chasdo is related to the word chesed, which is the name of our shul. Chesed means loving kindness, to care with love of and for and about people, each other, strangers, animals, nature, the world. All that is chesed. And we're taught that by this psalm, Ki Le'olam Chasdo. And even if you don't have a machzor, I think you catch on Ki Le'olam Chasdo and sing along a little bit. Yai da 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 da, Ki Le'olam Chasdo. Yai da 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 da, Ki Le'olam Chasdo. Yai da 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 da, Ki Le'olam Chasdo. Yai da 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 da, Ki Le'olam Chasdo. Hodu l'Adonai ki tov, ki le'olam chasto. Hodu l'Elohim, ki le'olam chasto. Hodu l'Adonai Adonim, ki le'olam chasto. Lo sei nitlo levado, ki le'olam chasto. Lo sei Hashemayim bitfuno, ki le'olam chasto. Lo rakah haaretz al hamayim, ki le'olam chasto. Lo serim gedolim, ki le'olam chasto. Et Shemesh le'meshel bayom, ki le'olam chasto. Et hayarech v'chachamim shel balayla, ki le'olam chasto. L'makei mitzrayim b'choreim, ki le'olam chasto. V'ayotzei Yisrael mitocham, ki le'olam chasto. B'yad chazakav Yisrael netuyah, ki le'olam chasto. L'gozer yam suf ligzarim, ki le'olam chasto. V'evir Yisrael b'tocho, ki le'olam chasto. V'nir parvach yam suf, ki le'olam chasto. L'molech b'amim b'bar, ki le'olam chasto. L'makem lachim gedolim, ki le'olam chasto. V'yarog melachim adirim, ki le'olam chasto. L'sichon melech Amori, ki le'olam chasto. U'liog melech Habashan, ki le'olam chasto. V'natan otam l'nachala, ki le'olam chasto. Nachala l'Yisrael avdo, ki le'olam chasto. Shebeshifleinu zachar lanu, ki le'olam chasto. V'yifrekenu mitzarenu, ki le'olam chasto. Noten lechem l'chol basar, ki le'olam chasto. Hodu le'el Shemayim, ki le'olam chasto. Yai da 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 da, ki le'olam chasto. Yai da 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 da, ki le'olam chasto. And now on page 64, page 64, there comes to us a passage from a book that many Jewish people have never even heard of. It's a book from the Tanakh, from the Bible. It's called the Divrei Hayamim, Chronicles. And originally, going back to the late antiquity, early medieval period, which is like the 200s, 300s, 400s or so, Divrei Hayamim was one book. And then at a certain point in time, probably in the 1400s, maybe the 1500s, Divrei Hayamim, Chronicles, was split into Book Aleph and Book Bet, Chronicles 1 and Chronicles 2. And this paragraph is here on page 64 for a number of reasons. I think one reason is to teach people who go through the prayer book that lots of different parts of the Hebrew Bible are part of our prayer service. But today I'm looking at it a little differently. The little paragraph entitled Covenant, please. You alone, Adonai, created the heavens, the high heavens, and all their array, the land and then all that is on it, the seas and all they contain. You sustain them all, which means you sustain everything, God. The hosts of the heavens revere you. You are Adonai, the God who chose Abram, brought him out of Ur of the Chaldees, naming him Abraham, finding in him a faithful servant. And what I see here is that one person was chosen from amidst the entirety of all creation. And then God said, by the way, I know you by name. And it's true that I have not, in my own mind, literally heard God's voice, and maybe some of you have, and many have not, at least not the way we've been taught as first graders in Sunday school. But ask yourself on this day, what does it mean to you for God to know you by name? In your innermost being, whomever you are, God knows you. And all these prayers that we recite, and in a while when we open the Torah, and this evening when Ben blows the shofar, approximately 7 or so p.m., give or take a few minutes, all that embellishes or enfolds us in a package that's been handed down for 3,800 years. But I think, at least for me this year, the core for Yom Kippur and the next part of the unfolding year is that God knows each and every one of you and me by name. And within that is a tremendous amount of love and certainty. And these days are very uncertain. So call forth to God on this day of Yom Kippur, and also tomorrow and next week, morning, afternoon, evening, by yourself, taking a walk, or perhaps with someone, in your own way. And let God hear your voice this year, as Abraham heard God's voice as described in the book of Chronicles. The top of page 67, the first 3 lines in Hebrew and then a little bit of English. Nishmat kol chai tevarech et shimcha Adonai Eloheinu. Adonai neither slumbers nor sleeps, but wakes those who sleep, rouses those who slumber, gives voice to those who cannot speak, frees those who are fettered, supports those who fall, straightens those who are bent over. You alone do we thank. And in a moment, Herr Cantor, Dr. Howard Horowitz, will be joining us for the Hamelech, which will be at the top of page number 69, introducing us to the main part of the service. Up until now, we've been in a preliminary mode, and now we're about to move into the main service known as Shacharit or Shachris. Shachris or Shacharit, it means morning. It's the morning service. Hamelech on page 69.
Hamelech Hayoshev al kisei ram v'nisa shochen ad marom v'kadosh shemo v'chatuv raninu tzadikim b'Adonai l'aisharim n'avatehila B'fi yesharim titramam, u'v'divrei tzadikim titparach, u'v'ilshon hasidim titkadash, u'v'kerev kedoshim tithalal. Uv'makalot rivavot amcha beit Yisrael, b'rinayit parshim Malkeinu b'chol dor v'dor. Shekein ekoch kol chovat kol ha'yitzurim lefanecha. Adonai Eloheinu v'Elohei avoteinu v'imoteinu. Lehodot lehalel, leshabeach lefaer, leromein lehader, levarech le'aleu kales, על כל דברי שירות ותשבחות, דוד בן ישי, עבדך משיחך.
The bottom of 69, Yishtabach.
ישתבח שמך לעד מלכנו. האל המלך הגדול והקדוש בשמיים ובארץ, כי לך נועד עלינו ולביתנו להיות ושושבך עליה וזמרה זממשלה, נצח גדולה וגבורה תהילה ותפארת קדושה ומלכות. ברכות והודות מעתה ועד עולם, ברוך אתה אדוני, אל מלך גדול בתשבחות, אל ההודות אדון הנפלאות, הבוחר בשירי זמרה, מלך אל חיי העולמים.
Amen. Chatzi Kaddish, the bottom of page number 70. Chatzi Kaddish, the bottom of page 70.
יתגדל ויתקדש שמי רבו.
Amen.
יעמוד חירותי וימליך מלכותי וחייכון ויומכון וחיי דכל בית ישראל בעגלה בזמן קריב ויאמרו אמן.
Amen. Yesh merabam v'rach l'mamayah.
יש מרבם מברך לעולם ולעולמי עולמיה. יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל שמי לקודשו
Bריחו.
לעילא לעילא מכל ברכתה ושירתה תושבחתה ונחמתה דאמירן בעלמה ויאמרו אמן.
Amen. Please rise, if so able. And in just a moment, on page 71, we will have the Baruch Hu, which is a call and response. Baruch Hu and Baruch. And then I'll lead the bracha for Yom Kippur on page number 71.
Baruch Hu et Adonai HaMevorach.
Baruch Adonai HaMevorach Le'olam Voed.
Baruch Adonai HaMevorach Le'olam Voed.
Baruch Adonai HaMevorach Le'olam. הפותח לנו שערי רחמים, ומאיר עיניך מחכים לסליחתו, יוצר עובר חושך, עושה שלום ואת הכל. Baruch atah Adonai, our God, ruler of time and space, who opens the gates of mercy, giving light to those who await your forgiveness, forming light and creating darkness, bringing harmony while creating all. And now we are seated, turning to the bottom of page 75 on the English side. The last three lines, playing off of the theme of the Baruch Hu and that opening blessing of light, cause a new light to shine on Sion, and may we all soon be worthy of its illumination. This is not referring to visible light, Roy G. Biv. This is speaking of something of a spiritual nature, a new glow, a glow of peace, of hope, of optimism for the future. Baruch atah Adonai, creator of lights. The first paragraph introducing the Shema, the top of page 76 on the English side, and thereafter the Vahavienu, but first the English. You have loved us deeply, Adonai, our God, and shown us boundless compassion. Avinu Malkeinu, for the sake of our ancestors who trusted in you and whom you taught the laws of life, be gracious to us as well and instruct us. Compassionate Creator, care for us. Allow our hearts to understand and discern, to hear, study, and teach, to observe, fulfill, and perform with love all the teachings of your Torah. Enlighten our eyes with your Torah. Attach our hearts to your mitzvot. Unify our hearts to love and revere your name so that we never lose hope. As we trust in your great, holy, awe-inspiring name, we will delight and rejoice in your deliverance. And now, Vahavienu, page 76.
Vahavienu l'shalom me'arba kanfot haaretz v'tolichenu kamiyut le'artzenu ki el poel yeshuotata uvanu v'acharta mikolam v'lashon וקרבתנו לשמך הגדול הסלע באמת, להודות לך ולייחדך ביאהבו. ברוך אתה אדוני הבוחר בעמו ישראל ביאהבו.
And in just a moment, we'll have the Shema and then the Vayomer. It will be on page 77 and then turning to page 78. It's the first paragraph, the second paragraph in silence, and then the third paragraph on page 78. Shema.
Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad Baruch Shem Kavod Malchuto Le'olam Voed Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha B'chol levavcha V'chol nafshecha V'chol me'odecha Ve'hayu Advarim ha'ele Asher Anochi Mitzavecha Hayahom Al Levavecha Vishinantam Levanecha V'dibarta Bam V'shiftecha B'veitecha U'velachtecha V'aderech U'v'shochbecha U'v'kumecha U'kshartam Le'oto Yodecha V'hayu Letotafot B'neinecha U'chtavetam Al Mezuzot Beitecha
Have the tzitziot ready for the Vayomer at the top of page 78.
Vayomer Adonai el Moshe Lemor Edaber el Bnei Yisrael v'yamarta alayhem v'yasu lahem tzitzit al kanfei vigdehem adoratam v'natnu al tzitzit hakanaf petil tachelet v'haya lachem letzitzit uritem oto uzachartem et kol mitzvot Adonai v'asitem otam v'lo taturu acharei levavchem v'acharei einechem asher atem zonim achareihem leman tizkeru v'asitem et kol mitzvotai v'hitem kedoshim le'elohechem ani Adonai Elohechem asher hotzeiti etchem me'eretz Mitzrayim v'hiyot lachem le'elohim ani Adonai Elohechem emet.
Adonai Elohechem emet. The very bottom English stanza of the lower passage on page 78. Truly, you are Adonai, our God, and the God of our ancestors, our sovereign and our ancestors' sovereign, our Redeemer and our ancestors' Redeemer. You are our Creator and the rock of our deliverance, our Redeemer and help. So you are known throughout time, for there is no God but you. In a moment, on page 80, the Mi Chamocha.
Mi chamocha, ba'elim Adonai, mi kamocha, nedar v'kodesh, nahara tehilot, ha'sefele. Shira chadasha, shibchu golim l'shimcha al sfat hayam, yachad kulam hoduvim lichu v'yamru, Adonai imlaho, le'olam evohed. Sur Yisrael, kuma be'ezrat Yisrael, ופדחנו ממך יהודה וישראל. גאו עלינו אדוני צבאות שמו, קדוש ישראל. ברוך אתה אדוני גאל ישראל.
You're invited to rise now, if so able, on page 252, beginning the Amida. We start with the Avot and the Amida in just a moment. Avot meaning ancestors, and at this moment in this prayer, we call to mind how each of us was influenced in his or her own life to walk forward in the future in Jewish life and Jewish tradition. And perhaps, I imagine, I presume, that many of us were significantly influenced by our ancestors. And also we've been influenced in our own way. And so as we begin with the opening paragraph of the Avot with the Amida, you might also have in the back of your mind, what have your ancestors, recent or perhaps distant, done to touch you, and how shall you touch others now and in the future? Beginning aloud.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu ve'Elohei Avoteinu v'Imotenu Elohei Avraham Elohei Yizkor ve'Elohei Yaakov Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Elohei Leah, Ha'el, Hagadol, Hagibor ve'Hanara, El Elyon, Gomel, Chasadim Tovim, וקוני הכל, וזוכר חסדי אבות ואמהות, ומביא גואל לבני בניהם, למען שמו ויאהבו. מסוד חכמים ונבונים, ומלמד דעת מבינים, הבטחה פי בתפילה ותחנונים, לחלות ולחנן פני מלך מלכי המלכים, ואדוני האדונים.
The top of 253, Zochreinu L'chaim.
זוכרנו לחיים, מלך חפץ בחיים, וכתבנו בספר החיים, למענך אלוהים חיים. מלך עוזר ופוקד ומושיע מגן, ברוך אתה אדוני, מגן אברהם ופוקד שרה.
Amen.
אתה גיבור לעולם אדוני, מחיי מתים אתה, רב להושיע, מוריד הטוב. מחכה לחיים בחסד, מחיי מתים ורחמים רבים, סומך נופלים ורופא חולים, ומתיר אסורים, ומקיים אמונתו לישני עפר, מי כמוך בעל גבורות ומידה מלך, מלך ממית ומחיה ומצמיח ישועה.
the Michamocha within the Amida, the bottom of 253.
Mi chamocha v'harachamim, zocher yitzurav l'chaim, zocher yitzurav l'chaim, l'chaim berachamim. V'ne'eman ata l'chayot metim, Baruch atah Adonai lechayei hametim.
Amen.
Yimloch Adonai le'olam, elayich Tzion, ledor vador, hallelujah. Ve'ata kadosh Yosef, Tehillat Yisrael, Tehillat Yisrael, Elena.
Moment of silence on page 255, perhaps the English. And so let all crown you sovereign, the ultimate arbiter of judgment, who discerns all mysteries on the day of judgment and holds close those who serve God with justice, who has compassion for the people of Israel on the day of judgment and guards those who love God with justice, and who upholds those who trust wholeheartedly in the divine on the day of judgment. The Kedusha on page 257.
Uvecheinu l'chata l'kedusha, ki ata Eloheinu melech. Nekadesh et shimcha b'olam k'shem shmakdishim oto b'shmei marom, k'katuv al yad neviyecha v'karazeh el zeh v'yamar. Kadosh, 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 Adonai tzvaot melech haaretz kevodo. Az bekol rash gadol adir v'chazak mashmim kol, mitnasim l'umat tzarafim l'umatam, Baruch Yomeru, Baruch kevod Adonai mimkomo, mimkom chamalkeinu tofia v'timloch aleinu kimach.
Mimkom ipim brachamim, v'yochanam yachrim shmo, ervok b'choyim temim b'mayim v'shmamrim, Shema Yisrael, Adonai, Eloheinu, Adonai echad. Hu Eloheinu, Hu Avinu, Hu Malkeinu, Hu Moshienu, Hu Yashmienu brachamav, Shenit lene kol chai, Liot lachem lelohim, aniron alechem, Adir Adreinu, Adonai, Adonenu, Ma'adir Shimcha b'kol haaretz, V'yarim b'kol haaretz, V'nmechad Shmo echad, V'direi kashach k'tuv lemor, Yimloch Adonai l'olam, Elhak Tzion, L'dor hallelujah. And now the Dor from Danielle and Josh Eisen. The Dor, the bottom of 257.
Ledor vador, ledor vador, ledor vador, nagid god lecha, ulenetzach netzachim, ulenetzach netzachim, kedushat chanakdish.
netzachim, kedushat chanati, shichacha lohenu, mipinu lo yanosh le'ovad, ki
Ledor vador, ledor vador, ledor vador, nagid god lecha, ulenetzach netzachim, ulenetzach netzachim, kedushatcha nagdish, v'shivchacha Eloheinu, mipinu lo yamush le'olam va'ed, ki el melech gadol, ki el melech gadol, v'kadosh ata. Ledor vador, ledor vador, nagid god lecha, ulenetzach netzachim, ulenetzach netzachim, kedushatcha nagdish.
Baruch Adonai,
Baruch u'baruch Shemo,
Ha'el HaKadosh, HaKadosh,
Amen.
Shkoyach, Danielle and Josh. Join me, the English, the top of page 262. Pardon me, please. There are 4 little stanzas in the English, reading them slowly aloud, the top of 262. Hear our voice, Adonai, our God. Be kind and have compassion for us. Willingly and lovingly accept our prayer. Turn us toward you, Adonai, and we will return to you. Make our days seem fresh as they once were. Do not cast us away from you. Take not your holy presence from us. Do not cast us away as we grow old. Do not desert us as our energy wanes. Our Chazan, Dr. Horowitz, continues, the top of 263, Ki anu amecha, 263.
Ki anu amecha v'ata Eloheinu, anu v'anecha v'ata avinu, anu avadecha v'ata Adoneinu, anu kehalecha v'ata chelkeinu, anu nachlatecha v'ata goraleinu, anu tzonecha v'ata roeinu, anu charmecha Viata notreinu, anu feulatecha, viata yotzreinu, anu rayatecha, viata dodeinu, anu segulatecha, viata keroveinu, anu amecha, viata malkeinu, anu mamirecha, viata mamireinu.
If so able in your home, and I know it's strange to continue to rise and be seated, we're trying to replicate an experience in the home which customarily is established here in the shul. And so people rise and are seated, indicating that for those prayers during which we rise, there's just a little bit more of a focus. And yes, people are in their own homes, but when you're rising, if so, try to see yourself within the company of other Jewish people, perhaps in other shuls or synagogues or temples or congregations where you've been in the past. Draw a mental image and see yourself within and part of the community. You are not by yourselves. You are with and within us. The Ashamnu, the top of page 264, is a presentation in Hebrew of the alphabetical presentation, you might say, of our missteps and our mistakes, our failings. And it's presented in Aleph, Bet, Gimel, Dalet order, perhaps to take hold of us. One of our earliest memories is learning the ABCs. This is the ABCs in Hebrew. And so we hold on to that point of youth from which we began. And we follow the simple Hebrew, Ashamnu, Baganu, Gazalnu, Dibarnu, Dofi, the top of 264.
Ashamnu, Bagadnu, Gazalnu, Dibarnu, Dofi, Hevinu, Hirishanu, Zadnu, Hamasnu, Tafalnu, Sheker, Yatsnura, Kizavenu, Latsanu, Maradanu, Niatsnu, Sararnu, Avinu, Pashanu, Tsararnu, Kishinu, Oref, Roshanu, Shichatanu, Tiavnu, Tainu, Titanu.
In the center of page 265, a small paragraph with the Hebrew letter Daled. You have always been known as the one who overlooks transgression. Hear our cries, we stand before you in prayer. Overlook the transgression of a people turning from transgression. Wipe away our transgressions from your sight. Customarily, immediately following the Ashamnu is the al chet, but today an English thought for the al chet. And we remember that the word chet, which is translated as sin, means to miss the mark. It's actually an archery term, to miss the target. And what's the very first thing that anyone does if she or he is involved in some type of target practice, let's say, kicking a ball into a soccer net, or throwing a ball into the basketball hoop, or archery for that matter. And when you miss, what do? You try again. The Hebrew word chet, translated into the English word sin, loses something of what we Jews take hold every single day of the year, not only on Yom Kippur. Every single day, when I miss the target, I realize I have an opportunity to do better. Right then at that moment, right then at that day. For the al chet shechatanu, for the sin wherein we have missed the target. God's questions, author unknown. God won't ask what kind of car you drove, but will ask how many people you drove who didn't have transportation. God won't ask the square footage of your house, but will ask how many people you welcomed into your home. God won't ask about the fancy clothes you had in your closet, but will ask how many of those clothes helped the needy. God won't ask about your social status, but will ask what kind of class you displayed. God won't ask how many material possessions you had, but will ask if they Anachnu v'chol amcha beit Yisrael l'chaim tovim oleshalom Baruch Adonai Oseh Shalom. The lower passage of the English B'Sefer Chaim. May we and the entire house of Israel be called to mind and inscribed for life, blessing, sustenance, and peace in the book of life. My prayer for all of us this year, for you and your loved ones, is to be signed and inscribed and sealed in the book of life, and more importantly, in the book of good health, and also the capacity to make a difference and reach out to others, family, friends, acquaintances, and those whom you do not know, and to assist them in one way or another with prayer, with hope, with your own presence, that they also be inscribed in the book of good health. And now in a moment, we open the ark for the Avinu Malkeinu. The Avinu Malkeinu is on page 271. And in a moment, our cantor, Dr. Howard Horowitz, will begin the Avinu Malkeinu. And then I will do a little bit of English along with you, and he'll echo that in the Hebrew that's found in the center of the page in the bold print. And thereafter, we'll sing the very well-known last line of the Avinu Malkeinu. The first part.
Avinu Malkeinu, Chatanu lefanecha. Avinu Malkeinu, Ein lanu melech ela ata. Avinu Malkeinu, Aseh imanu leman shemecha. Avinu Malkeinu, Chadesh aleinu shana tova.
Avinu Malkeinu, forgive and pardon all our sins. Avinu Malkeinu, do not look toward our sins and transgressions, blot them out. Avinu Malkeinu, return us to your presence fully penitent. Avinu Malkeinu, send complete healing to the sick among your people. Avinu Malkeinu, remember us favorably. Avinu Malkeinu, inscribe us for good in the book of life. Avinu Malkeinu, inscribe us in the book of redemption. Avinu Malkeinu, inscribe us in the book of sustenance. Avinu Malkeinu, inscribe us in the book of merit. Avinu Malkeinu, inscribe us in the book of forgiveness.
Avinu Malkeinu, hachazirenu b'tshuva shlema lefanecha. Avinu Malkeinu, shalach refuah shlema lechol yamecha. Avinu Malkeinu, zochrenu b'zichron tov lefanecha. Avinu Malkeinu, kotvenu b'sefer chayim tovim. Avinu Malkeinu, kotvenu b'sefer gula v'yeshua. Avinu Malkeinu, kotvenu b'sefer parnasa v'chalkala. Avinu Malkeinu, kotvenu b'sefer zechuyot. Avinu Malkeinu, kotvenu b'sefer slicha u'mechila.
Top of 272.
La 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 da da. La 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 da da. La la da da here da 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 here da. Here da 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 da. Avinu Malkeinu, chonenu vaneinu. Avinu Malkeinu, chonenu vaneinu, ki ein banu maasim. Aseh imanu, tzedaka v'chesed. Aseh imanu, tzedaka v'chesed, v'hoshienu. Avinu Malkeinu, chonenu vaneinu, ki ein banu maasim. Aseh imanu, tzedaka v'chesed. Aseh imanu, tzedaka v'chesed, v'hoshienu. Arai rai 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 rai. Arai rai 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 rai. Arai rai rai.
The full Kaddish Shalem is on page 272.
Yitkadav yitkadav shemei rabba.
Amen.
V'yalmad yirach yirutev yamlich malchutei v'chayechon u'vyamechon u'v'chayei dechol Beit Yisrael v'agalav izman kariv v'imeru.
Amen.
Yishmei rabba mevarach v'yalam olol me'almaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpar v'yitramam v'yitnasei v'yitadar v'yitalev v'yitalal shemei dekudisha.
Brichu.
Le'ela le'ela mikol birchata v'shirata tushbachata v'nechamata tamiran b'alma v'imeru. Yitkabal tzlatar u'otan d'chol Yisrael kodam avuhon d'vishmaya v'imeru.
Amen.
Yehi shlom rabba min shemaya v'chaim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imeru.
Amen.
Oseh shalom pimramav. Uyaseh shalom. Aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imeru.
Amen.
Amen.
And now we turn to the Torah service in a moment. And you and I are perhaps holding a prayer book in homes, scattered across a wide area, and some have joined in with this virtual service, perhaps not having a machzor. And now we're at the center of every Jewish prayer service, the Torah reading. Torah takes us back 2,500 years. It's our book of all books. That's how we first began as a people, to step outside of ourselves with study. And study always was shared with a community. And that's how we eventually had something called the Beit Knesset, the synagogue, develop, because people came together to study. And so now we're still a synagogue, a shul, because we'll be studying words and sharing thoughts and ideas together. And that is another step in the process of sanctifying our lives. Beginning the Torah service, Ein Kamocha, on page 274, Ein Kamocha.
Ein kamocha v'Elohim Adonai v'ein kemasecha malchutecha malchut kol olamim umemshaltecha b'chol dor v'dor Adonai melech Adonai malach Adonai yimlach li'olam va'ed Adonai oz li'amo yiteh Adonai yevarech et amo v'shalom Haftarah hamim Eitiva virtzoncha et Zion Tivenecha mot Yerushalayim Kivecha levad batachnu Melech el ram v'nisa Adon olamim.
And now, in the center of the page, Vayehi bin Soa, page 274.
Vayehi bin Soa Aharon Vayomer Moshe Kuma Adonai V'yafutzu oivecha V'yanusu mesanecha mipanecha Ki mitzion tetzeh Torah Ki mitzion tetzeh Torah Udevar Adonai mi Yerushalayim Baruch Shenatan Torah Torah Baruch Shenatan Torah Torah Le'ama Yisrael B'kedushato.
The top of page 275, Adonai, Adonai, El Rachum V'Chanun, known as the 13 Midot, the 13 qualities of God.
Adonai, Adonai, El Rachum V'Chanun, Erech HaPayim, V'Rav Chesed V'Yemet, Notzer Chesed La'alafim, Nosei Avod V'Fesha, V'Chata'a V'Nakei. Adonai, Adonai, El Rachum V'Chanun, Erech HaPayim, V'Rav Chesed V'Yemet, Notzer Chesed La'alafim, Nosei Avon V'Fesha, V'Chata'a V'Nakei. Adonai, Adonai, El Rachum V'Chanun, Erech HaPayim, V'Rav Chesed V'Yemet, Notzer Chesed La'alafim, Nosei Avon V'Fesha, V'Chata'a V'Nakei.
Va'ani tefilati.
ואני תפילתי לך, אדוני, את רצון אלוהים ברב חסדך, ענני באמת אישך.
And now on page 276, we take the Torah out of the ark. David? Is it? Yes, this one. And here we echo. I begin with the Shema, and then you reply. And then I begin with the Echad, and you reply. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Echad Eloheinu, Gadol Adonai, Kadosh v'Norah Shemo. Echad Eloheinu, Gadol Adonai, Kadosh v'Norah Shemo. Gadol Adonai Ramama Shemo Yachtav. Cha Adonai Hagetula v'Hagavura v'Tiferet v'Hanetzach v'Hahod Kicho b'Shamayim u'Ba'aretz Kicho b'Shamayim u'Ba'aretz Cha Adonai Hamamlacha v'Amid Naseh l'chol rosh Romemo, Romemo, Adonai Eloheinu, Ve'ishtachavo, Ve'ishtachavo, Le'ahadam Raglav, Kadosh Hu, Romemo, Romemo, Adonai Eloheinu, Ve'ishtachavo, Ve'ishtachavo, Le'ahar Kodsho, Le'ahar Kodsho. Ki Kadosh, Adonai Eloheinu. Shkoyach, David. For those of you who are joining us for the first time, without David Smith, who volunteered and jumped right into action back in March, we would not have had any of these services, Friday night, Shabbos morning services, of course, all these high holiday services. He set up equipment, and he has made connections of all manner that I don't understand with cables and plugs and other electronic gizmos and gadgets in order that we can make connections of our own, connections of a human nature, connections of a spiritual and emotional and learning nature. And there's a message that one person in her or his, in the case of David, obviously his volunteerism can promote connections with other people. And that's, of course, a defining message when it comes to the season of Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, which in Hebrew we call the Yamim Noraim, the days of awe. And I'm very grateful to David for all that he does for our shul. Customarily on Yom Kippur, we read 6 aliyot, but we do not have a minyan in the building. So I'm going to read just the first aliyah. And if you have the Machzor, it's on page 278 in the Machzor. If not, if you have a Tanakh at the ready, We're in the book of Leviticus, and it's chapter number 16. The scene is the first ever hoped for plan that a community will come together and undergo the scrutiny that you and I take for granted, because you and I have grown up, and our ancestors, hopefully our parents or grandparents or our friends or neighbors or so on, or other members of the synagogue, have taught us that when it comes to Yom Kippur, you're supposed to stop and pause and reflect and look back on the past year. Well, 3,300 years ago, no one had ever said that to the people of Israel. But Aaron steps forward, and this is the outline, if you will, of what's going to become a ceremony that will last for about 13 centuries and then fade. For in this ancient days, the well-known and conventional manner of coming close to God was by sacrificing animals, slaughtering animals in a very particular way, conducted by the Kohen, who changed garb in a variety of methods and in a variety of steps, and washed his hands as well along the way. And the drama was that everybody was convened and gathered together in one place. And that's what this is outlining for us. When the temple was destroyed the second time and never rebuilt, what we'd already started to do prior to the destruction of the second temple, which was develop a spoken prayer system, took on a new light and a new purpose and a new depth. And that's what we've been doing now for the past 2,300 years, amplified as the years go by. A spoken, chanted, sung, studied prayer service. But it all began with this, which is why we'll never forget and we'll never stop reading Torah. So the first Aliyah on page 278. וידבר אדוני אל משה אחרי מות שני בני אהרון בקרבתם לפני אדוני וימותו ויאמר אדוני אל משה דבר לאהרון אחיך ויבוא בכל עת אל הקודש מבית לה פרוכת אל פני הכפורת אשר על אהרון ולא ימות כי וענן אראה על הכפורת בזאת יבוא אהרון אל הקודש בפר במקר לחטאת בעללה Ketona bad kodesh ubash, umiknasei vad yil besaro, uvavneit bad yachgor, umitz never bad yitz, nof bigdei kodesh hem, v'rochatz b'mayim ebesaro uvesham, umeit, adab b'nei Yisrael yikach shnei sirei izim lechatat, v'alacha lola, v'ikriv Aaron eparchatat asher lo, v'chiper bado vad beito. And yes, it speaks of bringing the animals, and there were 2 goats, one that was brought here, and no one was brought here, and then later taken off and consigned to wander in the wilderness of ancient, it's called Judea, or the region is Yehudah. Yehudah becomes translated in English as Judah, but the region is named Yehudah for the tribe of Yehudah, the tribe of Judah. And because we're descendants of that tribe in that area, which is Jerusalem and a little bit to the south, we become called Judahites or Jews. So the high priest would take these 2 goats and symbolically transfer the sins of the entire nation onto 2 goats, and one was slaughtered in this time the tabernacle and then later in the temple precincts, and the other goat was sent off to wander and to escape. And that's the origin of the English term scapegoat. It's interesting that that term was initially focused on conveying the message of all the Jewish people wanting to make their lives better by getting rid of their chataim, their hate, their sins, and then starting the year off in a brand new way. And how many times have Jews become scapegoated over the past centuries? What an irony. We developed a system to make our future better, and those aggressors took hold of that ritual and victimized us and nicknamed us accordingly. But I don't want to talk about that. I just want to add one more sentence, and then we'll go on to the Mishaberach, the prayer for the healing, in just a minute or two. I'm struck by the last phrase that I just read here. It's the end of the first Aliyah. It's on page 278. That the officiant, the religious leader in the day, first has to focus on the needs of his household and then can focus on the needs of the community. There's a balance for every member of the clergy. How does she or he balance the needs of the community against the needs of family? And sometimes family gets the short stick because people are drawn in different directions. On the one hand, the responsibility of clergy is always towards the people. For the people need that connection and that message of hope and reassurance, especially in very strange times. On the other, if clergy is not grounded in his or her own family, in the certainty of the love of that household, then he won't be any good to the community as well. And now let's step out of this narrow view of this scene only on clergy and apply it to all of us, because now we're in very strange times, and every one of us has the wherewithal to reach out and to lift others. And we need to do so. If we're not grounded in our own homes, we're not going to have that emotional wherewithal. But if we're only focused on our homes, then we won't have any purpose for what we have within us. This year, let us take hold of the message of the first Aliyah of the Torah reading and see how each and every one of us as individuals and as households can be bound to the other, offering strength and support and hope. And now, in just a moment, we have a list of names which we'll be reciting, and in a moment we'll have the Mishaberach. But for now, first, before that, I mentioned the names of our loved ones. And if you know of someone who is ill, please mention that person's name aloud. And we remember on this day, Minya Elka Bat Sarah, Mordechai ben Zelda, Sheri Shem Tov, Mush Aharon ben Fega, Chana Sarah Bat Peshalea, Avram Yehuda ben Gisha, Malka Bat Grace, Binyamin ben Esther, Malka Bat Esther Scheindel, Shprinza Bat Bashi, Miriam Bat Bashi, Brian Claypool, Lynn Claypool, Ashley Hoey, Harav Malchitzedek ben Brocha, Rivka Bat Chav Shalifsha, Dina Tzipora Bat Devor Nachama, Eliana Bat Sareimenu, Avigail Bat Kobi, Yaakov Aron ben Chana, Avi Moshe ben Mindel, Tom Bastoni, Evangeline Maldonado, Debbie Pfeiffer, Wendy Pfeiffer, Avram Melech ben Fega, Pat Cockrell, Murray Bradwell, George Patinos, William Levy, Monica Knight, Elalea Bat Aviva, Eliza Esther Bat Miriam, Elizitara Bat Sarimenu, Mickey Bat Cecilia, Zorach Ben Leah, Shulmit Pesha, Lynn Hillman, Minyaelka Bat Sarah. And thinking of all those unnamed, those in hospitals and rehab wards and nursing homes across our country, across our world, all those who are ill and afflicted. And now, Misha Berach. We all say, Amen. Yes, we are lifting the Torah. David's going to do Hagbah. I'll get that. Thank you, sir. And again, you're asked to rise in your home briefly for a moment for Hagbah. free. It's heavy. Slide it down. Further. Slide. It's easier. V'zot ha'Torah asher sam Moshe Livnei b'nei Yisrael al pi Adonai b'yad Moshe. Yadai dai 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 yadai dai 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 yadai dai 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 yadai dai 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 yadai dai yadai dai yadai dai 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 yadai dai 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 yadai dai 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 yadai dai 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 yadai dai 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 yadai dai 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 yadai dai 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 wait yadai dai 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 put it here yadai dai 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 yadai dai 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 yadai dai 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 yadai dai 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 yadai dai 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 yadai dai yadai dai 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 yadai dai 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 yadai dai 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 yadai dai 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 dai. Shkoyach, David. V'hagba. It's a heavy Torah. So shkoyach. You may be seated. And in a moment, we'll go to an abbreviated Haftarah. The Haftarah begins in a moment on page 284 in the Machzor. Reminder, and I mentioned this yesterday, of the 60 to 65, it might be 70, depends on the calendar year, Haftarot that we have in the cycle, 18 of them come out of Isaiah. The ancient sages loved Isaiah because his message was always just worded so beautifully. The poetry and the intensity of his emotion captured the imagination of our ancients. And Isaiah asks, what kind of a fast are you doing now? And of course, that's for us the chief observance of Yom Kippur. And some people in their own lives may have made the choice of perhaps going to work or still working from home, let's say, and hopefully they're able to set that aside for Yom Kippur. And not everyone has a machzor or a prayer book, but we hope that everybody knows about fasting on Yom Kippur. I was speaking with Patricia Batya. We had a discussion one day a few weeks ago, and we were talking with some people in the discussion room, and I asked her, and I asked everyone, why fast? And Patricia made a comment that's still ringing in my head. She said the following: we spend a lot of time devoted to meals. We plan our meals, we go to the grocery store, buy our food, and then it's in the refrigerator or the cupboard, and we take it out, and we're chopping, and we're preparing, and we're adding seasonings, we're doing cooking. A lot of our energy is focused on meal and food prep, obviously. He said, one day out of the year, we don't do that. And she said, instead of taking the time to fill us up with food, what if we filled ourselves up with something else? And it's a beautiful insight. And I thank Patricia Batya for sharing that with us in our discussion group a few weeks ago and now with all of us here. What are we filling ourselves with on Yom Kippur? Let's fill ourselves with an awareness of who we are in our spirits within us, and how we connect with each other. Each one a spirit. And so now we turn to Danielle Eisen, who is reading a brief portion of the Haftarah in the English on page 285 and chanting briefly a bit of the Hebrew on 286.
Why? When we fasted, did you not see? When we starved our bodies, did you pay no heed? Because on your fast day, you see to your business and oppress all your laborers. Because you fast in strife and contention, and you strike with a wicked fist. Your fasting today is not such as to make your voice heard on high. Is such the fast I desire, a day for people to starve their bodies? Is it bowing their head like a bulrush and lying in sackcloth and ashes? Do you call that a fast, a day when Adonai is favorable? No. This is the fast I desire, to unlock the fetters of wickedness and untie the cords of the yoke, to let the oppressed go free, to break off every yoke. It is to share your bread with the hungry, and to take the wretched poor into your home. When you see the naked, to clothe them, and do not ignore your own flesh. As tikra Adonai ana teshava vayomer hineni im tasir mitocha hamata shelach etzva v'daber aven v'tafik l'raiv nafshacha v'nefesh nana tasbia v'zarach b'choshech oracha v'afilatcha katzorayim v'nachava Adonai tamid v'yitzbia b'tzach sachot nafshacha v'atzmatacha yachalitz v'yita kegan rava uchmatza mayim asher lo yachazvu meimah uvanu mimcha chorvot olam mosted dor vador tekomim v'kora lecha goder peretz mishovev nitivot lashavet im tashiv mishapat raglacha asot chafsacha bayom kochi v'karata lashabat oneg likdosh Adonai mechubat v'chibareto me'asot rachacha nimso chafsacha v'daber davar az titanah b'Adonai v'hir kavticha abamote haaretz v'chalaticha nachalat Yaakov avicha ki Adonai diber.
Shkoyach to Danielle for bringing her voice and her caring into our sanctuary today and into all of our hearts. And at this moment, our hearts are open to the nurses and the caregivers and the doctors and the orderlies and the technicians and the food service personnel and all the admissions clerks and everyone in hospitals and nursing homes across our country. For all are doing everything they can to uplift those who are very afflicted. A special prayer, and we say, Ribbon Shel Olam, creator of the universe, bring forth your additional love and touch, making that love and touch known in the world through the touch and the caring and the energies and the attention of the doctors and the nurses, the caregivers, the physical therapists and occupational therapists, and everyone else involved in the art and the love of healing. Strengthen the resolve of the technicians, the clerks, the orderlies, all those devoted to the lifting up and the healing of our loved ones and all those who are afflicted. Protect them all, keep them safe and keep them well, and bless them with energy and devotion. We all say Amen. And now a prayer in our Machzor. It's on page 288. On page 288. It's in the left-hand margin on page 288. The bottom left corner stanza. May this land, under your providence, be an influence for good throughout the world, uniting all people in peace and freedom, helping them to fulfill the vision of your prophet. Nation shall not lift up sword against nation, neither shall they experience war anymore. And let us say, Amen. Turning to page 289, our prayer for Israel. Avinu Shabashamayim, Tzur Yisrael v'goalo, Barech et Medinat Yisrael Reshit, Tzmichat Geulatenu. Avinu Shabashamayim, stronghold and redeemer of the people Israel, bless the state of Israel, the beginning of our redemption. Shield it with your love, spread over it the shelter of your peace. Guide its leaders and advisors with your light and your truth. Help them with your good counsel. Strengthen the hands of those that defend our holy land. Deliver them. Crown their efforts with triumph. Bless the land with peace and its inhabitants with lasting joy. And let us say, Amen. This is probably the first time that anybody has ever seen the rabbi holding Cheerios and Frosted Flakes on a bima on Yom Kippur, certainly broadcast over the internet. Our shul has been doing a food drive every year for the past decades, leading up to Yom Kippur. So although people are temporarily exercising caution, which is necessary, please remember in the next week to come by and bring by your non-perishable foodstuffs so we can continue to feed all those in need. We are very blessed. We have many friends, a great many friends. Some are Christian, some don't really espouse a specific religious identity or a label, but we have people who love us, who care for us, who respect us, who stand by us, who see within us something as beautiful as the desire to love God and to love fellow men and to act accordingly. We see people who know that we are motivated to make this world better. These past days leading up to Rosh Hashanah, I've been receiving phone calls and cards and letters and texts and emails from people I know addressing me, us, all of us, Jewish people, with blessings. Father David Tokar, is known to many of us here, wrote a prayer for us for this high holiday season. Blessed are you, O Lord our God, creator of the universe, for you have brought us to the beginning of a new year. May you be blessed forever for your mercies and goodness. Grant to us the spirit of generosity to share the blessings you bring to us, to care for those who are burdened, to rejoice with those who rejoice, to be holy as you are holy. May your love be upon us, O Lord, as we place all our hope in you, now and always and forever. Imagine, Father Tokars wrote that prayer for us. And many of you remember my good friend Rob Nichols. He sends his prayer greetings. He writes, I'm thinking about you and all of your family, all of Ahavas Chesed, and all of the chosen people. I'm praying for a peaceful and productive new year, an end to the pandemic, and a new chapter in the way we humans treat one another. You are all in my prayers for a sweet new year. A good and close friend of our family, Yvonne's and Richard's best friend, Dora Quinn, prays for us regularly. Honey Dimitriadis, many of you know Honey, Greek Orthodox woman, and she's just fantastic, involved in our community in many different ways, wrote, Hi, Rabbi, I know it's Elul. Honey Dimitriadis, Greek Orthodox, she knows about Elul, the month before Tishrei, last month. I know you're getting ready for the holidays. Yesterday, for us Orthodox Christians, it was the beginning of the ecclesiastical year, which is big stuff. I'm honoring every new start. I wish you a good year. And the messages went on and on. And 3 weeks ago, people gathered for the 7th annual presentation of books to the Agnes Tenenbaum Holocaust Collection, located here at the Marks Library on the main campus of the University of South Alabama, here in Mobile. And there are many, as I said, beyond Ahavas Chesed who are joining in and don't know what I'm talking about. Let me explain. Through the efforts of largely Christian people, we have a Holocaust library established on our own campus library named for a Holocaust survivor. And over the years, many people, many of them Christian, have donated significant funds so that we might acquire, not we, the library, might acquire special research materials. And there are now 1,700 volumes and items in the Agnes Tenenbaum Holocaust Collection located in the library of the University of South Alabama. 1,700 pieces in a Holocaust library in Mobile, Alabama. Who would have thunk it? And it came forth from primarily at the fore, Don Barry, Sister Ann Brady, and especially Jerry Daring. A Holocaust library collection on a university campus in Mobile, Alabama, so that for generations to come, students and teachers and members of the public can learn of the perils of anti-Semitism. Look at how many friends we have, how many friends we know, and how many friends we don't know. And as a reminder, some of you joining us now know this and some do not, that 2.5 weeks ago on Slichot, when we were setting aside a few moments of song and prayer in a Zoom session, some very cruel thugs entered the Zoom meeting and said vile things and offended us and hurt us deeply. And Rabbi Kramer and I were very upset, as were many people, of course, in the gathering. And I've spoken about this in Rosh Hashanah, but what you don't know is that Robert Clopton, the president of the Mobile chapter of the NAACP, reached out to me. And he said that, I know you're in pain and I wanted to join with you. And when I was speaking with him on the phone a little while ago, Robert Clopton, the president of the NAACP, indicated that he cared enough for me and my community to reach out because he wants us all to be respected. When friends whom we know for many years gather together in times of sorrow and of pain, we understand it. But when an acquaintance, I've only known him for less than a year, takes the time to reach out, to say that I want to support you in a time of hurt, then I get healing. and I'm lifted up. And when I'm healed and I share this message with you, then you too become healed. And over and above Robert Clopton, who lives locally and does know me, we've been given another gift because strangers from a middle school in Denver, Colorado, sent us greetings. Children in a middle school drew pictures and cards, and they were scanned into an email and sent to us. How powerful is the love of somebody? And when one child draws a picture, I hope you know that you are cared, I am lifted up. But multiply that out by 19 people, 19 children who will never meet me and never meet you and likely will never visit Mobile, Alabama, took the time to send pictures and cards so that we would know that we are not alone. In the face of hate and derision, see the power to reinforce and to build up. In the face of ridicule, see the capacity by children to strengthen and uphold adults. In the face of humiliation, take hold of the love shared freely by children with hearts open to strangers and hearts closed to discord. This is the reason for Yom Kippur this year, to learn from children, from adults, from black and white, neighbor, friend, acquaintance, stranger, somebody I will never meet again in my life. The reason for Yom Kippur is to learn to open our hearts, to begin a year in spite of many obstacles, in spite of so many barriers, to begin a year with openness. And you and I have heard many times throughout the media and many other social media sources of the year 2020. We Jews have a brand new year. And the challenge for us, while we live in the 2020 of American society and culture, is to see ourselves in a year that is new and moving forward, walking into the future, guided and escorted by friends who love us and cherish us and see us as valued and worthy for them to reach out to us. So anytime you hear somebody say, oh, it's the year 2020, say to yourself, and maybe share with someone else, no, it's the brand new year, 5781. And you know the number 18, which means life. But what you don't know is something that I'm sharing with you now. That the year 5781 is Tishrei, which means you will aspire. It's a direction. It's a goal. It's nearly a command. The number of the year means you will aspire. Take the gifts of love and of caring from the hearts of unknown people, from the president of the NAACP, from people whom you may or may not know, Jerry and Sister Ann and Don and Honey and Father David Tokars and Rob Nichols and Dora Quinn, and weave them into your heart. Weave these gifts of love into your heart that's now beating during the year of Tishrei, 5781. You will aspire to share daily the compassion that's been given to you, and you can bring it in turn into the world. There's a reason for these many expressions coming from friends and loved ones and acquaintances and strangers now into this year of Yom Kippur. The Yamim Norim, the days of awe. There's a reason, and the reason is to energize us all for the coming year of 5781, Tishrei, the year in which you will aspire to share our respect, to energize us to share love and kindness and chesed, for that is our name. To share our energy to make the world better, one person at a time, with the gesture that comes from your heart, your energy, your caring, your giving, just as we have received from children and Christians and people who do not even identify themselves religiously, friends and strangers alike. This is the reason for Yom Kippur this year. 5781, is not a year to be concluded quickly. 5781 is a year to be embraced and to say, I have the energy to move forward and to bring caring and a sense of awe into the world, just as others have done for me, with me, by my side. That is the way we begin our new year. And in a moment you'll see a little video compiled by David Smith with music by Yehuda Silverwolf of these pictures sent to us from strangers, children who have the openness and the genuineness of childhood. May we learn from people close at hand and those distant, and may we all be blessed to make this year a year of Tish Av. You will aspire. And may all say, Amen.
Sometimes I lay under the moon and I thank God I'm breathing. And then I say, don't take me soon, 'cause I am here for a reason. Sometimes in my tears I drown, but I never let it get me down. For when negativity surrounds, I know someday it'll all turn around. And all my life I've been waiting for, I've been praying for the people to say that we don't wanna fight no more. There be no more wars, our children will play. One day, one day, one day, one day, one day, one day. It's not about win or lose, 'cause we all lose when they feed on the souls of the innocent. Blood-drenched pavements keep on moving, the waters stay raging. In this maze you can lose your way, your way. It might drive you crazy, but don't let it faze you, no way, no way. Sometimes in my tears I drown, but I never let it get me down. But when negativity surrounds, I know someday it'll all turn around. And all my life I've been waiting for, I've been praying for the people to say that we don't wanna fight no more. There be no more wars, our children will pray. One day, 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 one day.
Again, shkoyach to David Smith and Yehuda for bringing their talents and their creativity together so that all of us might see the love shared so generously from those middle school students from the school in Denver. And we're all uplifted by remembering. And in a moment now, we remember our loved ones, and it is nearly time for Yizkor. And before we begin the Yizkor, we mention the names of those people who we've lost since last Yom Kippur. Billy Kahn, John Shepard and Ann Shepard, James Ward, Florence Posner, Rhoda Herzog, Kim Olinsky, Mayor Perloff, Jim Conlon, Larry Michelle, Philip Reddish, Lillian Rudnick, John Sutton, John Mulholland, Dr. John Isbell, Murray Gollum. And if you wish to mention the name of loved ones at this moment, and we turn now to Yizkor on page 290 with first our cantor Dr. Howard Horwitz leading us in the first paragraph, then a bit of English, and then the second paragraph a moment thereafter on page 290.
Reshet Sifateinu Yarav Lefanecha El Ram Ven.
On page 290, Yizkor, Adonai Shiviti. Adonai Ma Adam B'Teido Ehu, page 290, Adonai Ma Adam B'Teido Ehu. Adonai Ma Adam B'Teido Ehu, Ben Enosh V'Tachashvehu, Adam Lahevel Dama, Yamav Ketzelover, Babok Yutzit V'Chalaf, Lerio Melel V'Yovesh, Limno Yameinu Kenoda, V'Navi Levav Chochma. In the center of the page. On this solemn day, we each make judgments about the quality of our life. We re-examine our deeds and relationships with our community and with others. We express our yearnings for a new year, a new beginning, a year during which we commit ourselves to work toward bringing health and peace to all. We long for a year when individually and communally we shall strive to live in a way that is more reflective of the ideals that we cherish. Now, in the midst of looking at our life and assessing its quality, we pause to reflect and to remember and to dedicate ourselves anew. Shivi tirnal nagdi tamid kimi mini balamot lochen samach libi v'gagvodi aperasrish kon levetach. And you see before you a paragraph or two for loved ones. If you have a machzor, it's on pages 290, 291. And in a moment, after some silent reflection, we will turn to the El Mole Rachamim, which will be at the top of page 293. For now, a few moments of silence. The Mole Rachamim begins on the top of page 293. El Mole Rachamim, 293.
El Mole Rachamim, Shochein B'Hameromim, Hametzei Menucha, Nechana Tachat Kanfei HaShchina, B'Amalot Kedoshim, Utahorim, Kizohar Haraki Amasirim, Lenishmot, Kol Eile Shehizkarnu Hayom Liveracha, Shehalchu La'olamam, Began Eden Tihi Menuchatam, Ana Bal HaRachamim, Hastireim b'seiter kenafecha le'olamim. utzror bitzror achayim et nishmotehem. Adonai hu nachalatom. V'yanuchu v'shalom al mishkavotehem. V'namar Amen.
Exalted, compassionate God, grant perfect peace in your sheltering presence among the holy and the pure, whose radiance is like the heavens, to the souls of all those we recall today. May their memory be a blessing, and may they rest in paradise. Master of mercy, may they find eternal shelter beneath your sheltering wings, and may their souls be bound up in the bond of life. Adonai is their portion. May they rest in peace. And we all say, Amen. The 23rd Psalm, Mizmor LeDavid.
Mizmor LeDavid. Adonai ro'i lo echsar. Binot sheyar bitzeni. Al mei menuchot yenahaleini. Nafshi yeshover. Yancheni b'maglei tzedek. B'maglei tzedek. Leman shemo. Gam ki elech begei tzalem ovet lo irara ki ata imadi shivtecha umishantecha shivtecha umishantecha hema yenachamuni tarach lefanai shulchan neged tzarerai tarach lefanai shulchan neged tzarerai Dishanta Vashem en Roshi, Dishanta Vashem en Roshi, Dishanta Vashem en Roshi, Kosi Revaya. Ach Tov v'chesed yirdefuni kol yemei chayai v'shavti b'veit Adonai v'shavti b'veit Adonai le'orech yamim.
Before Kaddish, a short statement from a 14-year-old girl named Abigail Bryant, who died some years ago from leukemia. She refused to call it leukemia. She called it marshmallow. Just breathe. We all, at some point, stop breathing. What if we lived one breath at a time? We speak as though breathing is easy because it is innate. Half the time we don't even notice our breath. When did breathing become the uncool kid that all the other body parts ignored? Think about the phrase, catch your breath. You have to catch it because you lost control of it. Alec and Cecilia, find control over your breath. And please live for me like tomorrow is your last day. Kaddish. Rising if possible. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei rabah. Amen. Be'olma divra chirute v'yamlich malchute b'chayechon v'yomechon uv'chaye dechol beit Yisrael ba'agala uv'izman karif v'meru. Amen. Yehei shmei rabba mevarach la'olam ololmei olmaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh v'yithadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shmei tekudesha brichu la'ela min kol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechemata da'amiran ba'oma v'meru. Amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'meru. Amen. Oseh shalom bimromav hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'meru. Amen. May all those amongst the household of Israel and everyone be granted shalom and the ability to share shalom with others. On page 298, in just a moment, ki lekach tov, in just a moment, ki lekach tov. The very top of the page, the last 4 lines of the stanza, Ki lekach tov and Eitz Chaim, page 298.
Ki lekach tov natati lachem torati al tazovu Eitz Chaim hi lama chazikim ba v'tomecha meyushar deracheha darchei noam v'chol netivoteha shalom hashivenu Adonai elecha v'nashuva Chadesh yameinu kekedem.
You may be seated. We are living in unprecedented times. And people are staying away from shuls, synagogues, congregations, and temples. And it's been our goal to, in some way, convey the essence of a service that many experience only once per year. And generally people come into this shared space. But now people are in their own homes. And in a certain manner, your homes have now been elevated. Your homes are now a synagogue of your own making. And through the internet connections on Shabbos, days of the week, and also on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, we are weaving all those little synagogues together and forming a new and different type of structure that we've never anticipated before. At this point, customarily in the service, there was poetry, and I explained what it means to harken back to the days of 2,000 years ago when one person, the high priest, the Kohen HaGadol, would step into the temple and then step out, and the entire nation saw itself as being forgiven and exalted and uplifted. But in some way, we're in a different experience now. And so the next portion of the service, again for the past 2,000 years, has been called Martyrology. And we speak of many episodes in the history of our people wherein there has been loss and suffering. 2 years ago, it's hard to believe it's been 2 years, there was an attack in a shul called the Tree of Life Shul in Pittsburgh. And for the past months, we've all been hearing and feeling and sensing that reverberating in our minds. And in a moment, we're going to move forward to the abbreviated rest of the service and then concluding. And how do we replicate this part of the service known as martyrology for people living in many different locations, not in the same room, not hearing each other? And so I bring back a picture that I shared a year ago. This was an emblem that was put forth shortly after the shooting in Pittsburgh. You remember Pittsburgh is a Steelers town. And all across Pittsburgh, in many different methods and locales, there were messages of love and support to the Jewish people because of what had happened in that shooting. And these messages continue to be held in and throughout Pittsburgh. And I shared this 2 years ago and last year. And I'm sharing it now as we journey in our own synagogue service, which is shared through many different homes, to a new and different understanding of worship and prayer. Take hold of the respect which emerges so genuinely from the many friends we have, and transform that respect into acts of caring, deeds of ahavat chesed, loving kindness. And you and all of us will be strengthened. That is my message this year during what is typically called the Martyrology service. And if you're with us, I ask you now to turn to page 354. Page 354, a bit of English. 354. On page 354, a bit of English. It's the last paragraph of the page. And I've said this before, and some may remember and some may forget, but actually, on Yom Kippur, we make Kiddush. But since we're fasting, we just don't add wine. This is the Kiddush for Yom Kippur. It's on page 354. It's the black paragraph, about halfway down, beginning at the last line, purify. It's up after the red ink, it's purify in black ink. Purify our hearts to serve you faithfully. For you forgive the people Israel and pardon the tribes of Yeshurun in every generation. Beside you we have no sovereign who pardons and forgives. Baruch atah Adonai, sovereign, who pardons and forgives our sins and those of the people of the house of Israel each year, sweeping away our guilt. Ruler of all the earth, who makes the people of Israel and the Day of Atonement holy. We, the people of Israel, and Yom Kippur together are shared in holiness. And in just a moment, after the Yevarechecha, we'll turn to page 358 for the Hayom Ta'amtenu, but not yet. But first, I'm again stepping out of the norm, for this is out of the norm. And typically on Rosh Hashanah, we have our Kohanim step forward and offer the priestly blessing. I'm not a Kohen. I'm not a Levi. I'm a Yisrael, which means rank and file. I come from good peasant stock, like 99% of the Jewish people, both literally in terms of my immigrant ancestry and going back 3,000 years. I'm just one man. I'm also your rabbi. And from the innermost heart that I have, which holds all of you close every single day, I say, Yevarechecha Adonai v'yishmerecha. May God, my God, our shared God, who's fashioned the universe, bless you, keep you, protect you, guard you. Ya'er Adonai panav elecha v'chuneta. May God illuminate you and glow a light of favor and grace and loving protection upon you. Yisa Adonai panav elecha v'yasem lecha shalom. And may God lift up God's face to you and bless you with shalom. And you need to understand what it means for God to lift up God's face, to look at you with shalom, because that means God is looking up to you. So God is as close to you as you are, not hidden in the heavens, but this close. May God look up to you, and may you sense that God is looking up to you. And in this coming year of Tish Av, 5781, the year that you will aspire, may you know shalom. And now the ark is opened in a moment for the Hayom Ta'amtenu, which will be on page number 358. In a moment, Hayom Ta'amtenu.
Hayom, 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 hayom Ta'amtenu.
Amen.
Hayom, 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 hayom Tevarchenu.
Amen.
Hayom, 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 hayom Tegadleinu.
Amen.
Hayom, 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 hayom Tidrashenu letova.
Amen.
Hayom, 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 hayom tiftavenu lechayim tovim.
Amen.
Hayom, 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 tikabel berachamim uvratzon et tefilateinu. Amen.
Amen.
Hayom, hayom, hayom. Hayom, hayom, hayom. Hayom. Hayom tishma shavateinu. Amen. Hayom, hayom, hayom. Hayom, hayom, hayom. Hayom. Titmachenu bimin tzidkecha. Amen.
Amen. Baruch Adonai, Oseh Shalom. Hasidic Kaddish is on page 359.
Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemeh Rabba.
Amen.
V'yalma divrach hiruteh, v'yamalich malchuteh, v'chayechon uv'yomeichon, uv'chayei dechol beit Yisrael b'gahala, uv'izman kariv v'yimeru. Amen.
Amen.
Yehi shmei Rabba marach le'lam u'melmaya. Yitparach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitramam v'yitnase v'yithadar v'yit'ale v'yithalal shemei dekudsha berichu le'yela mikol berchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechemata Da'amiron v'yalama v'yimeru. Amen.
Amen.
Titkabal tziloton uvauton dechol Yisrael kadam avuhan divishmaya v'yimeru. Amen.
Amen.
Yehi shlama rabba min shemaya v'chayim aleinu v'yal kol Yisrael v'yimeru. Amen.
Amen.
Oseh shalom b'merahav hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu v'yal kol Yisrael v'yimeru. Amen.
Amen. You know, if you've ever stayed around until the break, which is usually a little bit later because we have a longer service when we're in person, I tell a joke before we take a little bit of a break, and we will be coming back. The 4:30 healing service is on Zoom. You've got to have that login information. Otherwise, I'm sorry, you just can't get in. It's a security measure. 5:30 to 7 is the concluding service, Mincha Nila, with the final shofar blast. And now, so here we go. So mommy's busy at the house, and all of a sudden she hears the school bus pull up, and so she calls out, "Honey, are you home?" And little Tommy comes running in. "How was your first day at school?" "Oh, it was great, Mommy. It was great, Mommy. We had a wonderful time." And she turns, she says, "But Tommy, that's not the mask that you left here with this morning. What happened?" "Oh, it's much cooler. I traded with Sammy, who traded with Johnny, who traded with Billy. It's so much cooler this way." Gemar Chatima Tova, a good and sweet year.